from the Safe Communities Studio, overlooking San Juan County, this is a San Juan Safe Communities Initiative Community Update.
Good afternoon. We're here today because we're very concerned by the massive waste spill in the Animas River in Colorado that EPA officials have admitted to causing. On Wednesday morning, EPA workers triggered a massive release of mine wastewater into Cement Creek in San Juan, San Juan County, Colorado. The spill is estimated to be much more than 1 million gallons, putting watersheds, livestock, and our families and communities downstream at great risk. I've been disturbed by the lack of information provided by the EPA to our environmental agencies in New Mexico, and strongly believe that people in our communities downstream deserve to have all of the facts at the earliest opportunities. Here in New Mexico, we were not notified about this release until 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, even though the release is reported to have occurred nearly 24 hours before on Wednesday morning. And the first notification received by the state of New Mexico came from an official with the Southern Ute tribe, not even the EPA. I hope the EPA will be more cooperative and informative and forthcoming moving forward as we work to address this situation. That is critical, that we work through this situation, and that the EPA will demand the same of itself as it would of a private business responsible for such a spill. And we expect the EPA to closely monitor any potential long-term impact of this release on the health and safety of local people, farmers, and wildlife. In the meantime, I've ordered state agencies to work with local and federal officials to ensure the health and safety of New Mexicans and that they be protected. I'd like to thank the Bureau of Reclamation for releasing water from Navajo Lake yesterday, which is helping to dilute the plume. I just did a flyover over the area, and it is, I can't even describe it to you. It is devastating to see what is your river and what it's supposed to look like. To look even much darker than what you're seeing right behind us right now. I pray that this is going to be something that will not have the very long-term effects because it's in the river. It's a sight to see. One we would have never expected to have in New Mexico, and to have the EPA responsible for it. You know, our New Mexico Environment Department is working around the clock to closely monitor the situation. You have had Cabinet Secretary Ryan Flynn here immediately after having heard of the situation, as well as Tom Blaine, the state engineer. They have been in this community working with counterparts and other agencies on how do they minimize what has taken place. And they're going to keep working with the communities in San Juan County area informed, and they're going to keep them safe. And that's what's going to be so important, is keep your radios on, your televisions on, make sure you're keeping that information and that you're getting it from us so that you have constant good information all the time. Today I'm also announcing a multi-agency team that will be in place all week to continue to monitor and provide the community support that is needed. They've outlined needed safety precautions, which may be needed for several days and possibly longer. Do not use nearby floodplain level wells. If you live in the Animas or San Juan rivers floodplains and your wellhead is at roughly the same level as the river, you should not use the water. Not for drinking, not for cooking, or human or animal ingestion until further notice. Boiling the water will not remove the contaminants. Do not draw canal or river water. If you draw domestic water directly from the Animas or San Juan rivers or irrigation canals, refrain from using the water until further notice. Do not water livestock. And do not eat fish from the Animas River or the San Juan River watershed. In the short-term aftermath of the EPA-caused spill, water conservation is of the utmost importance. Conserve your clean, potable water. That is of the utmost importance. We don't know how long this is going to last, and so make sure to conserve your good water. Get potable water from water stations. They're available at Center Point Fire Station number 1, Flora Vista Fire Station number 1, and Valley Fire Station number 4. These stations will be open today and tomorrow from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. and will remain open until further notice. Please visit www.nmedriverwatersafety.org for continuing updates and resources. This website will also have a list of all the domestic and non-domestic wells within 1.5 miles of the Animas River. You've seen a couple of gentlemen here that I was talking to earlier and shaking their hands. They have the rubber boots that are up to their knees. They're in that river, they're in that water, and they're testing it constantly because you deserve to have the best and the most accurate information. And they are around the clock in that river testing that water to see what's in it. And I'm demanding that the EPA send us a laboratory so that it can be tested immediately and not have to be sent anyplace for it to be tested later. We're committed to working around the clock to keep local communities informed and protected. And we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that EPA is held accountable. God bless you. Please be careful. Please follow these instructions. Make sure that you are safe, your animals are safe, cattle, farms, everything that is dear to you is safe, and we will be here to support you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you so very much. Now I'm going to introduce to you Cabinet Secretary Ryan Flynn, who's been on the ground since the very beginning, almost 24 hours after being given our late notice, but came here immediately knowing the significance of what had just happened. Thank you.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Governor. I want to start off by kind of reviewing some of additional information regarding municipal water systems. If you get a water bill every month, your water is safe. So we are concerned about contact with the water in the river. We are also concerned about domestic wells within the floodplain of the Animas. But because the minute that we were given notice, we immediately began deploying resources and engaging the public water systems in the area. And the public water systems are safe. The water you are getting from your municipal systems is safe. So you can continue to drink that water, to use that water for cooking, to bathe in that water. That water is safe.
For how long?
I think there is depends on the water system, but there are arrangements in place. I do not have any concerns in the short term or intermediate term. The city of Farmington has a 90-day supply of water, and they have the ability to go to other sources as well. Aztec also has I believe, I don't want to speculate, I know they have more than 30-day supply of water, and they also have the ability to tie into other sources of water as well to continue to bolster their supply. But the public municipal systems are safe. One of the things that helped the state in this situation, and one of the reasons why Governor Martinez has repeatedly communicated at the highest level to EPA our frustration about the lack of response and notification, is that as soon as we are notified, we can immediately begin deploying resources and taking the proactive steps that we need to make sure that we're protecting citizens and the public, as well as livestock and other important assets such as our farming community in the region. Luckily here that the plume did not travel as fast as an EPA initially estimated, so we had plenty of time from the minute we were notified to make sure that the steps that were necessary to protect those public water systems were taken. My agency has been working with the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, New Mexico State's Extension, Bonnie Hopkins, she's been with us. She was just at the public meeting with us, and they are actively engaged in the situation to make sure that the agricultural community has the resources in place to make sure we can continue to irrigate crops and take care of livestock. On the Environment Department, the website that we're managing, which I'm going to repeat again, the www.nmedriverwatersafety.org, we are continuing to push information out to the public as it arrives and as we gather that information, and we will continue to provide information about where you can go for questions and additional resources. In addition to the Department of Agriculture being engaged and active and on the ground right now to ensure that we continue to monitor the situation and take care of our agricultural community, the state engineer, Tom Blame, he's been engaged on this from the very outset, and he has also deployed staff and resources to continue to work with the agricultural community, to contact people with ditches, to make sure that they were closing those ditches as quickly as possible, and really take steps to protect our citizens. I wish I could tell you that I had more information from EPA right now than I do, but I don't. We've demanded information from EPA, and we've been given limited information thus far from EPA. We'll stand for questions at the end if you don't mind. I think the big difference here between the way Governor Martinez is handling the situation and the way EPA has handled this situation so far is that this is being handled at the highest level of government in New Mexico. The governor has been directly engaged. We've been on the ground. We've immediately deployed resources, and we are taking this extremely seriously. EPA has not had high-level employees on the ground. They have just arrived with some employees, and we welcome them here. We want them here to supplement our efforts. But the governor has demanded that EPA provide more resources and that EPA provide leadership at the highest level to ensure that there's better communication. EPA Region 8 manages the state of Colorado. EPA Region 6 manages the state of New Mexico. And EPA Region 8 has not been forthcoming with providing data. They didn't even provide notice to us. Again, the Southern Ute Tribe is the source of where we were first informed of this as we move forward. What we are doing, in addition to ensuring that we have other agencies heavily involved and continuing to provide support for public water systems, is we are deploying. I have staff in the field taking samples. The information we've got regarding pH levels, when we pull those samples, we can immediately gather information on pH levels or what the acidity of the river is. We can also gather information about dissolved oxygen and turbidity, the amount of sediment that's in the water. And so we're gathering that information. So far, those levels have not raised concerns for us. But the second issue is the metals that were in the water. And that requires further laboratory analysis. EPA has pulled that and has sent that for laboratory analysis. The moment we get that data, we will push that out to the public and continue to make that information available. We are also engaging. We have staff deployed in the field pulling samples and sending that information for our own analyses. It will take us until midweek next week before we get the first results back from those analyses, which is why we need resources, and we're expediting, sparing no expense to get this work done and processed as quickly as possible. But we really need EPA at the highest level to be engaged here and to deploy resources to ensure that we're approaching this as aggressively as possible. In addition to deploying staff to support public water systems and continuing to take samples and analyze the impacts on the river, I have staff on the way to the area, and we will be here and have a presence throughout the week as the governor has ordered. We will have our staff at the San Juan County Fair to provide free testing for domestic wells. And it's really important that the people with domestic wells in the floodplain are given the opportunity to access that testing. If your well is not within the floodplain of the Animas or San Juan, downstream of the confluence, then we are not concerned about your well at this time. We will have next week, the week after next, we will have a water fair in the area, and we will provide free testing for all residents. The free testing tomorrow, we really want to make sure that the people who have domestic wells in that floodplain have the first opportunity to get that information and to work with our staff. We will also deploying staff right now, and on Monday we are going to begin knocking on doors and trying to make contact with people whose wells we've identified as being within that floodplain, to try to be as aggressive as possible to begin collecting samples from those wells and getting that information. You did not cause this spill. You shouldn't have to be burdened to go out and get this information. We are working as hard as possible to get resources to you and to approach this as aggressively as possible. I wish I could give you all the answers to every one of your questions, but until we have more information about the nature of the contaminants that were released and the concentrations, it's really difficult to begin to tell you things about, what's the best way to treat it and to provide more information. As we continue to gather information and we are given that data, we will push that out to the public, and we will continue to use media advisories. We will continue to collaborate with the San Juan Emergency Operations Center and the county officials, and we will continue to push information out to the media and try to get it to you. It'll be on that website I mentioned, www.nmedriverwatersafety.org. As soon as we have it, we will push it out on our website. Finally, I want to thank all of the local officials who've been involved in this. The response from the local government officials, from the employees of the state of New Mexico. I have two of my guys who are out there all night pulling samples constantly, and they're texting me at 5:30 in the morning with pictures of what they're pulling and what they're seeing. And I'm proud to be a New Mexican because of how this community has really approached this. And there has been no territorial backbiting. There's only been a focus on how can we move forward, what can we do to help. Every single government official, a lot of whom are here today, from the county level, the city of Farmington, Aztec, the fire chief, the police department, the sheriff's department, state representatives, there's just been an outpouring of support. And I really think that EPA should look at how we've approached this situation and steal a page from our playbook, because the way the local community and the state of New Mexico have been responding to this is something that I'm proud of, and I think you can be proud of. But this is not going to be over in a day, and we're going to have to remain here and stay vigilant and stay engaged for the long haul. And most importantly, we will demand that EPA stay engaged until we can promise that the river has been returned and you're safe. And this is not going to be a 2-day or 3-day situation and then it's done. This is going to require long-term monitoring to really understand the impacts. Once we understand what contaminants were released, we can better understand what those potential impacts are and what to look for. Right now, we're taking a very conservative approach and trying to be as aggressive as possible. As we gather more information, we will continue to update the public and let you know as soon as we know that it's safe to begin recreating in the river again, that your wells are safe. We will push that information out as soon as it's available, and I can assure you the governor has demanded and is continuing to demand at the highest level of EPA that they make this a priority. They shouldn't be pushing this down to middle management. This should be being engaged at the highest level, and we will not rest until they are fully engaged, they are visibly present here. They need to have, like the governor said, and she's demanded, a mobile laboratory here. They also should have an incident command here. And there shouldn't be finger pointing between one region and another. That's why the highest level of our administration, she is engaged, ensuring that we're all coordinating and working together, and we've been doing it. And again, I really thank all the local officials for all of their work. It's been a team effort, and we're going to have to continue to stay vigilant and work together. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
How far downstream is it going to go and where's it going to end up with contamination?
So that's a great question, and unfortunately I can't give you a definite answer. So dilution is really the solution right now, and as the contaminants and the solids continue to fall out as it moves down the river, it'll eventually dissipate. After the confluence, I think the governor was just showing me a lot of her pictures when state engineer and I flew the river yesterday. We actually were flying over the plume right when it crossed the state line with the county, and who were helping us really get eyeballs on that. And you can tell there's a measurable impact based on the photographs that the governor's taken and that the county has taken after that confluence. So that's why when the governor mentioned the Bureau of Reclamation's contribution, that has been a huge help. There, when Tom Blaine and I, the state engineer, were on the phone with Bureau of Reclamation very early yesterday morning, and they began shortly after our conversation upping the rate that the water was moving in the river is about 650 cubic feet per second. They began slowly releasing water from Navajo Lake to about 1,300 cubic feet per second, which is well within what the river can handle. But that's having a measurable impact. You can also tell as you look at, for us who've seen what the plume looked like in Durango versus how it looks here today, that it is slowly diluting as it moves down the river. But unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly when it will end. I think the area that is going to have the largest impact is from the site of the release to that confluence with the San Juan and Animas rivers. Yes, sir.
I'm just confused as to how we don't know what's in there exactly yet. Truly, they took samples before they tampered with the plug. I don't understand that completely.
Sure. And gentleman was asking about why EPA doesn't know what's in there, and I think that's a really great question. And we right now we've got more questions than answers. Unfortunately, the EPA, the latest update they provided, they just listed a suite of contaminants that they think could be in there. But I really, I think it's most important to provide you with accurate information and not just speculate on what could or could not be there. So I just wouldn't feel comfortable speculating about what may or may not be there. I mean, obviously, given the color and given the materials they were working with, there will be iron and zinc in the river, and there are some other metals that we're certainly watching and concerned about. But I think that's a very good question, and I just don't have an answer I can give you. And I think these are the questions that really need EPA engaged at the highest level here, so that not only can they provide that information to us, so that they can be answering those questions from you. Yes, sir.
So, given the time of the year that this happened, and the snow melt in the mountains has already melted, it won't fish the river. So this is going to be reoccurring every year in the spring. This, or the chemicals, the heavy metals, will be washed down every year in the spring.
So I think that's a great question, and again, I think that there's going to have to be long-term monitoring, because it's just because the plume passes through and the river returns back to the color it was beforehand does not mean that we're all clear. There's going to be ongoing monitoring and maintenance required, and honestly, some of the potential impacts are more long-term, where the invertebrates that the fish are feeding on and that the wildlife are feeding on, those are the types of things that we absolutely need to monitor. And in order to really begin understanding what we're going to have to look for in the short term and long term, we really need that information about exactly what types of chemicals, what type of contaminants we're dealing with here. But I think that this is not going to be a short-term situation where we're here and then we're gone in a couple days. This is going to require a long-term commitment from EPA, and I can already tell you that the governor has made it clear that we're going to continue to be here, and we're committed to this in the long term as well.
Any other questions?
You can go and I can ask Mike.
What the immediate effect on wildlife that they monitor so far?
I will. I'm sorry. the woman asked whether there's been any reports of immediate impacts on wildlife, and I have not received any reports of immediate impacts on wildlife. I know that they had, I think the state of Colorado had taken about 120 fish at a couple different locations, and they were monitoring the impacts on the fish. And when the report I received last night was that they had only had one fish have an issue, which is, if you bought a goldfish at a fair, you know that one fish dying is potential for that. But we have not observed any impacts on wildlife yet. But again, this is not the type of thing where the impacts are necessarily going to be immediate. That's why there has to be persistent long-term monitoring of the impacts, first and foremost on the public, but then also on wildlife and the people who we depend on these resources, including our wildlife resources, our agricultural community. So that's a great question, and so far we have not received any information suggesting impact on wildlife, but that doesn't mean much right now. I know Director Sandoval from the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish. We were actively working together all day yesterday, and she had staff mobilized, and the state. Again, we're not waiting for EPA to show up. The governor was on this the moment we heard about it. She was engaged. We were meeting, and we were in the field, just moving as fast as we could to try to take the steps, the most aggressive steps we could take. But this is not a short-term deal.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Governor, thank you for being here. Ryan, thank you for being here. With the acknowledgement that the impacts that this sort of event has on the state of New Mexico, can you maybe elaborate on why stringent regulations can sometimes be helpful to states like New Mexico that are downriver and having to deal with the results now of a legacy issue of an old mine that nobody really wants to be responsible for?
So Mike, I think that's absolutely a good question. So what he asked was, can you kind of talk about the value of stringent regulations? And I think that regulations, our approach has always been, these are our resources. They don't belong to any person or corporation. They belong to the citizens. And so we take those resources very seriously. There's nothing more valuable than our natural resources. And I think that if you look at the record, certainly of Governor Martinez and I, since we've been here, we have been extremely aggressive in how we regulate. Under Governor Martinez's leadership, we adopted the first water quality standards for lakes in New Mexico. Had never occurred before until the Martinez administration. We also adopted the nation's toughest regulation for copper mining, period. There is no regulation for copper mining tougher than the regulation we have. And why was that necessary? Well, in February and March in 2011, about less than 2 months after Governor Martinez came into office and I had the honor to work for her, we signed a settlement with a mining company in Silver City. Governor Martinez settled a case where there had been about $18 million of damages to wildlife and water. And so the old system that the state had been using for addressing mining impacts was not working. It was failing. We simply would not have had to sign an $18 million settlement and work to get that settlement for the state of New Mexico if the old system was working. So what did we do? We went and developed the nation's most stringent regulations for the copper mining industry. But what we wouldn't do is put these industries out of business. And one of the issues you had here with EPA is that they're working on a site, EPA is doing the work themselves. And when operations cease at a site, resources also dry up. And it's difficult to get someone to come and clean up the mess after they've already finished their operations and left town. So it's important that we absolutely want to create a climate where there's science-based regulations and we're taking our resources seriously. And at the same time, we need to make sure that the people doing business here are allowed to operate and continue to invest resources to ensure that when they leave, it's cleaned up, not to some generic standard. It's clean up to a background, to the way it was before they started their operations. And that's been our commitment, and that will continue to be our commitment under Governor Martinez's leadership. So thank you all for coming here today. It's an honor to serve you. Thank you.